Democracy in Africa is a product of colonialism.
I wouldn't agree with you on that.
Politics in Africa is paid for. It's bought. Do you know elections in Africa is quite expensive? About majority of those who end up being elected comes with an agenda. And that is why I'm saying that for democratic institutions to benefit Africa, the minds of Africans should also change.
The worst democratic government is better than the best autocratic regime. I stand by that, and I stand to be challenged. There is a popular saying that if you want to know the real character of a man, give that person money and power. And once dictators have money and have power, that is the end of it. Every is now suppression, oppression, and destruction. So no dictator there is no benevolent dictator anywhere. Because that benevolence, you think he's building roads, he's building bridges. Any opposition is crushed. Any opposition is killed. I've asked you, you want your president, you describe him as an excellent man, to transit into a dictator. We have a president in Nigeria. No matter how we describe it, no matter how benevolent he expresses himself, I wouldn't want him to have extra 1 year beyond the constitutionally recognized his tenure.
Good evening from here. Good morning, good afternoon, or good everything wherever you are joining from. We want to welcome you to this special episode of your podcast, our podcast, my podcast, and the podcast that touch issues that resonate with every one of us. First, we want to thank you for being part of this community, Glasscast podcast community. You are the reason why we're here. We can't be here without you. And your contributions, your suggestions, your enthusiasm, and every way and manner that you contributed to what we do actually inform what we do here. The only thing I will say is, if you have those around you who have not clicked that subscribe button, who have not decided to follow us, are they still trying to make up their mind? We want them to be part of this community. Encourage them to join us in what we do within this environment. And on this note, I want to say a special welcome to you to this episode of Glasscast podcast. And with me this evening is the son of Glasscast, the able elder of Glasscast. Elder, what do you have to say to our subscribers here?
Well, all I have to say is thank you so much for what you are doing with us, for your comments, suggestions, criticisms, for your likes, comments, and the sharing of our contents. We really appreciate what you are doing. What you are doing is also encouraging us, because if you put out something there, nobody's commenting, nobody's criticizing you, then there's something wrong somewhere. So I'll just say thank you to our subscribers and followers. Thank you for the thing you do. And if there's anything that you want us to talk about, please put it in the comment section. Like Dr. Eze will always say, our comment sections are open across platforms: YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all over X. So whatever you want us to discuss, put it out there and we'll take it up. If we don't have the capacity, we will bring an expert to deal with that. So thank you so much, and looking forward to today's episode.
Yeah, looking forward to today's episode. And when Elder made mention of capacity, we have a man with capacity in our studio, a great philosopher and a policy analyst. Dan, could you introduce yourself to our followers on this platform?
Thank you, Dr. Eze, and thank you, Elder. And hi to all the viewers and the subscribers. As Dr. Eze said, I think this is a place for very critical analytical thinking. Everything that borders about reasoning is being discussed here. And so thank you for you, Lord, having me. And I say hi to you, and then we'll see how the conversations unfold.
We'll see how the conversations unfold. And if you look at that brief introduction, you would see what I meant by having a great philosopher in the house. I, gave that room for Dan to introduce himself, because Dan is somebody I know. He has a very long CV. And while we were planning for today's event, there has been a lot of things going on. Dan was, going to tell us about activities like outdoor activities, mountaineering. Dan is somebody that it may surprise you that this man here has been to too many mountains. You may find out that he may have been at Kilimanjaro itself, but that would be a topic for another day, and we would maybe, if time permits, we would also look at those social aspects. But today we want to delve into the philosophy of politics. So we want to interrogate, or we want to understand what happens within the political landscape of Africa, using that philosophical concept to understand what some of the things we relate to, how they transpire within everyday activity. This suggestion, like I will always say, is from a popular demand. Because recently we released an episode about electoral reform in Nigeria. And there has been that suggestion that if it is possible, in the interest of continuity, that President Tinubu should do 16 years in office to consolidate some of those his good activities or his achievement that has been happening in Nigeria. That is what some people are suggesting. And based on some of the, even though some people are against that, so that is why we want to look at this, how democracy affects institutional development, political development, social development, cultural development within the African continent. And Dan will be...
Doctor, let me interrupt you before we get on. In fact, I think I'm getting older and more mature now, because you are mentioning Tinubu 16 years. I should have, if we were like 5 years ago, I would have walked out of this studio. I think straight away. But I think I'm becoming older and more accommodating to some views, no matter how outrageous they may sound. But sincerely speaking, I just
you're surprised to hear that.
To hear that coming from you, that somebody suggested it and you want to talk about it is scandalous and diabolical.
Well, remember, what we do here is based on popular demand, and we would always listen to the comment and the interest of our followers and our subscribers. So we have people who are enthusiastic about what the government of the day is doing in Nigeria, and we have people who are critics of what the government of the day is doing in Nigeria. But remember, the discussion today is not centered on the electoral reform in Nigeria. It's about democracy in Africa. So we want to use that point to expand on the tenets of democracy, whether it is attached to tenure elongation or whether it is attached to achievement within the political institution. So let us get into the discussion. And I would always say, if you have your bottle of water, if you have anything that would keep you glued to this conversation, I think it's important you get that closer, because it's going to get interesting. As you can see, the elder has already started reacting to this conversation. The elder himself is reacting to this conversation. Let's see how it goes. So, democracy, by popular definition, is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that is what everybody knows about democracy. But when you look at it philosophically, it looks like that idea of the people requires further interrogation. Daniel, what is your position on this?
Thank you, Dr. Eze. I get the idea that democracy is for the people. But then we also have to also in a way try to look at it from contextual perspective. I normally do a bit of comparative analysis. So, is there any definition for democracy in the West, from Western perspective, and democracy from the African and the developing perspective? And I think that is where, if we are able to draw that line, then we can say democracy is for the people. I believe that for democracy to be for the people, there has to be very good institutions first. And then it also takes time. And so from the Western perspective, if you look at the institutions that have been built, it's not perfect, but democracy can be for the people, where the people do have say. But then you transport the same democracy to Africa, and sometimes the dynamics is something else. And so with that, I wouldn't say in Africa, democracy is for the people. Yes, it's supposed to be for the people, but then is it really what it is? And I think that is the bigger question that we all try to unpack.
Yeah, understanding that people in democracy. I know you would have something to say, because it sounds initially, when I said what some of our followers and subscribers, we are saying within our pages and our comment section, that statement sounds a bit undemocratic.
Well, I wouldn't say exactly that until I hear one from him. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm for democracy. That is not working in Africa at the moment. There is a reason why it is not working. That is not working in Nigeria at the moment. There is a reason it is not working. It is not because the system is not right or is not proper, but because the people who are implementing the system is not implementing it the way it should be. And you mentioned that in the West, there are institutions there that have been built. And these institutions were not built by authoritarian regime. They were not built by autocratic regime. They were built by democracy, which is for the people, and they continue to improve. They continue to get better. They continue to improve every day. But what I think why you are discouraged about democracy in Africa is because we are not building the institutions. Take, for instance, in Nigeria, we've had a long period of uninterrupted democracy, 1999 till by May 29. Now it's going to be 27 years. If 1999, 27 years, if my math is correct. But the proper institutions that we're supposed to build, we are not building them. The last episode we released, we talked about electoral reform. Should we still be talking about electoral reform in Nigeria after 27 years of practicing democracy? You and I, we live here in the UK. They are no more talking about electoral reform. They have built that institution that will help them, give them a seemingly near perfect electoral process that will usher in that democracy that is for the people. No system is perfect, but ours in Nigeria and in Africa is that we destroy the institutions, we destroy the system, and we have authoritarian regimes in the name of democracy. So that is the problem we are having in Africa. But democracy, and for democracy, the worst democratic government is better than the best autocratic regime. I stand by that, and I stand to be challenged.
Well, the worst democracy is better than the best autocratic regime. And I wonder what would be your position in this argument today, because if you look at the tenets of democracy, it includes periodic election, it includes referendum, it includes freedom of speech, freedom of association, and a lot of freedoms that people should enjoy. And if you look, because we are talking about democracy here, and democracy is a Western instrument. It has Western design, and the type of democracy that the West designed for themselves doesn't look like the kind of democracy we have in Africa. So it looks like that democracy, the ingredients of democracy in Africa is a bit dysfunctional within the African society.
I want to respond to a bit of what you said. No one is against democracy, and I think we have to make that clear.
Okay.
Democracy, the benefit of it is good. You said it is the institution that is missing. And I'm of the view that I think before democracy can even be thought of, the institution has to be built, because don't forget that when institutions have been built, there are people that have benefited from the lack of that institution. In every change, there are people that are for and against the change. And that is where, when you are doing that from a democratic standpoint where you want to involve the people, there will always be those against, and that can frustrate the effort. And so my point is, and that is where I feel there has to be a leader that with the final, or with democracy in mind, but then come from an angle of a bit dictatorial, but with a planned sort of an agenda to transfer everything to democratic structures. But first, build the institutions and build the people, because if the people are not even built socially, economically, politically, you can even now bamboozle your way through all the democratic structures, but definitely there's going to be frustration. It's more or less like building a magnificent house in a place where there are no toilets, and people don't have access. And I use that, people don't have access. What do you think is going to happen? You may find your walls being painted with.
Let me ask you, who is the president of Ghana? What's his name?
John Dramani Mahama.
Okay. Would you
an excellent man.
Okay, an excellent man. Mm-hmm. Would you be happy if he transforms into a dictator?
I think we also have to understand and set we also have to be clear. Dictatorship, and that is why there's a bit of an adjective, a benevolent dictator.
Okay.
So it is not dictatorship as the one that at the end of the day, it is going to sort of go wayward, which is what in some aspect we've seen. Mm-hmm. But a dictator with a heart of gold, and that is all. And there is this is it Kenyan or a Zambian professor, Dambisa Moyo? I mean, she wrote this book, Dead Aid. I mean, it's a very.
I know
so
what you're talking about.
She's also coming from the perspective that Africa do not need democracy for now. Africa needs a dictator with a benevolent heart. And if you look at the democracies now, as we see and we enjoy from the West, and even in other parts of Africa, none of them started. Mm-hmm. It was someone that led the revolution, not militarily in terms of sort of with all the excesses that comes with it, but with an agenda that in the end, the rule will be transferred to a democratic institution, but build the institution first, get the people to understand the benefit thereof. And that is my argument.
Okay. Every dictator starts off with good intention. And every dictator has gone wayward. Usually, when military take over, the people will be rejoicing, yeah, this is what we want. This is what we want. You start doing some things, solving some immediate problems. But by the time he stays there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, everything will change. Everything will turn. Those is good intentions. You won't see them anymore. Because there is a popular saying that if you want to know the real character of a man, give that person money and power. And once dictators have money and have power, that is the end of it. Every is now suppression, oppression, and destruction. So no dictator there is no benevolent dictator anywhere. Because that benevolence, you think he's building roads, he's building bridges. Any opposition is crushed. Any opposition is killed. I've asked you, would you want your president, you described him as an excellent man, to transit into a dictator? We have a president in Nigeria. No matter how we describe it, no matter how benevolent he expresses himself, I wouldn't want him to have extra 1 year beyond the constitutionally recognized his tenure.
If I may intervene here, we have to look at this. We have to take specific and insight from this analysis. Like when you are talking about dictatorship, democracy, and all this. If you look at in terms of stability, the type of democracy, like I want to look at Nigeria. President Tinubu just won election in 2023.
Okay.
He hasn't even done 1 year. They have already started doing campaign for another election, and it causes distraction. If you check the countries that brought this idea of democracy to Africa, remember, democracy in Africa is a product of colonialism.
I would agree with you on that.
Okay, we will look into that as well. Now, if you go to those countries, they have a relative level of stability. Nigeria, Ghana was colonized by Britain. Mm-hmm. Britain don't have regular change of government. From your record, you know that the Conservative was in government for 14 years.
No, they were in government for 14 years. Not that there were periodic elections. In that 14 years, there were elections for 2 times. They had the first election in 2010, had the next one in 2015, had the next one in 2019. But then the last, 2019.
2019. There was 2019.
And,
there was 2024.
There was 2024. So there have been periodic elections, and that is one of the tenets of democracy. So when Cameron won in 2010, he didn't stay. He didn't become a benevolent dictator. There were periodic elections. Government changed in those days. Let me tell you, when former U.S. President Bill Clinton was the president of America, the economy was so good, everything was doing so well, that they said that, in fact, he deserves another term. But no, because this is democracy, another person would have to come in. They had George Bush. And when George Bush came in after his 8 years, people felt that he didn't do well. They voted Obama. Obama did so well. By the time he was leaving, the economy recovered. Now, Trump came in. Trump went out. Biden came in. Trump is back in again. So these are the things that we talk about. But look at those other countries that have had one sitting president from ever the period we know. Look at China. Look at Russia. What we don't agree or accept is that liberty and freedom is immeasurable. You can't quantify it financially. What people in those countries are suffering, you probably will not suffer it. I see a lot of people are anti-West and anti-democracy. And I ask, do you know anybody living in Russia, like you and I, going to Russia to live? The suppression, the victimization, the lack of freedom that people suffer there, you can't quantify it in terms of democracy. I'm not saying that Nigeria or African democracy is perfect. We caused it. We can make it better. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can build on what we borrowed or what we copied. There are things that these clothes you and I are wearing, this Western culture, Western dressing. We don't have to throw it away, say, we have to go back to our forefathers, the way they used to dress and so on. We can build on what we have and from there make progress. So I think the issue of that we borrow this democracy from the West is working, is not working. His argument that we should go beyond and look inwards and know what our people should do to make this democracy work.
Because you mentioned America, do you think America is an ideal example of a democratic society?
There is no ideal society. The only place you get ideal society is in heaven.
I don't know. I don't know. You know, there are different types of heaven. I don't know.
Well,
If in heaven there's no democracy.
make of it whatever you want to make of it. So that's why there's no. That's why
is there democracy in heaven?
There's no democracy.
There's God. There are Trinity, three persons in one God.
Heaven operates in a kingdom system, and every kingdom has a king, and there's no democracy. It is what it is being said, what God says in the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so, but I get your point, and I think we have to set this. I am not saying democracy is not good. I'm just looking at the timing and the rate at which a nation developing should mature to be able to try to grasp and to reap the benefit of the democracy that we are talking about. Now, look at, I mean, and I said in my opening statement, I don't think there's any nation that has developed on the aspect of all out democracy. I maybe if you can name one, you can let me know. If you look at Turkey, they all started as the father of the nation, having the national interest at heart, one nationalism, to the point where they are prepared to even sacrifice their blood for the nation. And so, and as it unfolds, it transforms into some form of democratic structures. We can talk about South Korea. It started, the father, I've forgotten the name, but then started as a leader that in a way had a vision. We can even also look at Dubai. Look at Dubai now.
Most of the countries in the
most of the countries, look at Dubai now. And you made mention of China. We are not saying that the excesses is good. And that is why that is why I qualify it as a benevolent dictator. But that benevolent is also subjective. Will depend on what level of vision the person has and the heart that the person has. Now, I think the fear of that, which you talked about, like every dictator has turned out to be worse. I did a little bit because, I've a little bit of student of history in African politics, trying to sort of understand why these things happen. Every, for instance, leader in Africa that comes with a persona of a dictator in a way is anti-imperialist. So they come with the mindset that the colonial powers do not help us. And as a result of that, let us collectively build our institution. Yes, we may need assistance, but that assistance should not be dependent on what it is being dictated to us. So they vehemently detest imperialism. And they also detest that level of neo-colonial structures that covertly comes back to sort of, in a way, superimpose on us. So with these two things in mind, and I read a bit about Kagame and some dictator African leaders. Now, what I see the reason for the excesses, I don't think they want to stay in power for long. But who to trust and transfer that level of leadership for that person to also have that vision they have also built and not to sort of squander it. So there's lack of trust. And that is why they want to stay for long. And then when that happens, yes, it breeds, there's a saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. That one is there. So there is lack of trust. Because if you look at all those African countries that do have, opposition leaders, if you go deeper, they are being financed by the West. And when that happens, there is a level of lack of trust that comes with it, because here is the case: we've been colonized for a very long time. Now we've got our independence. We are trying to build our structure, and so let us unite. And I'm going to end by giving an example. Our former leader, Kwame Nkrumah, got us independence. 57 to 60, he was the prime minister, and then they transferred to republic from 60. So he was there from 60 up until his overthrow in 66. Now, from that 6 years, a lot of the things that he did is what Ghana thrives on today. And so for all the political dispensations, you can't pinpoint a major kind of project that does have sort of that is sustainable and have the vision of even people that are not born yet. For instance, you have our hydro power plant, Akosombo Dam, and probably at that time we may not have been maybe 2 million or 3 million or 5 million, but now a nation of about 30 something, we depend on that. That is how visionary that person was. And so I come up to say that yes, we get the excesses are there, but most of them is as a result of lack of trust, because I don't even think that any leader wants to be on for a very long time, but their fear will be to hand over to someone who may not have a nationalistic agenda, but by decoy, being financed by the West. And as a result of that, and that is where they also start to kind of cramp down on opposition leaders. And to end with the Kwame Nkrumah, at some point he wanted to lead Ghana to a one-party state. One would say that it's a dictator, but there is a level of empathy, or there is a level of benevolence to it, because he said there are multi-parties. All of you come and let us be one. And I think what they did not like was, okay, if we are going to be one, why should you all the time be the president? And that is what brought about that sort of division. But you can tell from his mind that he's bringing other people on board, but let us be one, because of, to me, in my opinion, lack of trust, until probably a successor or someone that has also built into that ideology for power to be transferred. It happens in China, it happens in South Korea. So that has been the excesses, to me, has been because of lack of trust.
Now, let me take you on this.
Yes.
This lack of trust you're talking about, the leader is not the one to decide who to hand over. In Nigeria, we call it godfatherism. And we did an episode about it and criticized it and hammered it with all manner of negative tags. So it's the people who will decide who they want to elect in the next general election. And when they elect that person, if the person fails them, they will learn their lesson, they will elect a new person. If he does well, they will reward him with a second term. But for Kwame Nkrumah you use, he's sitting there, he's looking for somebody he will trust to hand over the power to. Obviously, people will not agree with that. And that is not democracy. Again, no matter the agenda he has, no matter the vision he has for the country, why not try out some other person? You may be lucky, get something better, because you don't want to stand here and think that you are the best thing that has happened to your country while other people have not been given that opportunity, or while other people have not been tried. You may get something better, you may get something worse. That is why it is periodic. If you get something better, good, rewarded with another time. If you get something worse, you know what? We show you the exit door, you leave. Okay. When you talk about opposition, I also do not want to agree with you entirely that every opposition is financed by the West. In Nigeria, for example, in the last election, I don't think the opposition, at least Peter Obi, is not being sponsored by by the West. We know
Do you have evidence to that?
I have evidence to that. We saw his campaign fraud, everything. We have made public. People saw it.
But millions of dollars and pounds came from abroad into Nigeria too.
We are individuals who were contributing $10, £20 here and there.
Those individuals, I don't know if
it's clear. Peter Obi, he's told you, go and verify. So he's clean. He is clear. Nobody is sponsoring him. And that is why, I mean, we know if he's being sponsored by the West, we know what would happen. But for that one, I'm sure, and I don't think there has been any opposition that is being sponsored in Nigeria by the West, even when Tinubu and Buhari were in opposition. They were not being sponsored by the West.
I want to hope that Nigerians would agree with you on this particular position. When in 2015, on the eve of a presidential election in Nigeria, the then president of America, Barack Obama, sent his Secretary of State to have a meeting with an opposition candidate in Nigeria. And you want us to believe here that there was no external interference, especially in that 2015 election when Tinubu and co were in opposition.
You know how the West work? When they see the direction of the election, they start making alignment and realignment. If you remember, Buhari has been contesting election. I think that was the fourth time contesting presidency.
Since 2003, yeah.
Good. So he's been contesting election. He's been in the opposition. It was after his alliance with NPP and AD came together and formed APC. And with all the troubles Goodluck Jonathan had, with his the corruption going on, the incompetence and so on. So these people now saw that there is a shift. There is a more likely shift in the direction of the election.
What about this arrangement you're talking about? Does it include the alleged collaboration between these individuals you mentioned and the West in terms of boosting Boko Haram activities in northeastern part of Nigeria? Because there are allegations that those things were created to destabilize Nigeria. Even the sitting president
who created Boko Haram? It's not the West that created Boko Haram. Even there are allegations that people in this current government or in the previous government were the ones who created Boko Haram.
If it's not the West that created Boko Haram, even when there are allegations to that, those bombs, those aircraft, those machine guns they are using, are they produced in Nigeria?
Or who are using the Boko Haram?
Yes.
Whether they are produced in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, Nigeria don't produce such things. So they can acquire it from anywhere. It's not like they are being sponsored.
And the sitting president could not acquire arms and ammunition to fight Boko Haram. You must have listened to President Jonathan on his statement. He was even using a pastor to go and buy arms and ammunition from the black market because the West sanctioned him from acquiring equipment to fight terrorists in Nigeria.
As for the West, they will always want to have influence in Africa. And that is not bad. That is not bad because, of course, they do that as our colonial masters. The name itself brings a lot of memory, but let's take it that they'll always want to. But where their alliance, any alliance of the West is to their favor.
I agree with you.
Now, what they do not want is any leader that is anti-imperialist or is against neocolonialism. So when that happens, regardless of whatever you are doing, they will come after you because they see that as a threat. And we have to settle that. Let me, for instance, what do you call it? Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso. Look at the way he started. And I think it was about 3 years or thereabout, they sort of, he was assassinated. Now, anyone that rises up in Africa with a nationalistic mindset goes in direct opposition with the interests of the West. And we can understand that. You may have your disagreement, but any leader that rises with a nationalistic agenda goes in opposition with the West. Let me give an example. In our extractive industry, I mean, we're getting kind of like peanuts for our royalties. But then it was about 3% or thereabout. Now, just about a week or probably for the past last week in Parliament, they put in a proposal to bring it down to 1%. Why? Because America threatened. Because there was that sort of a whole lot of discussion that we should even increase it. That is coming from the masses. And that is what I believe that democracy should be, listening to the masses. But even in that, their voices were not heard. And America started coming in. You don't have to do that. France started coming. You don't have to do that. And now they put in this document before Parliament to reduce that to 1%. It is their interest. Now look at
and that is dividends of democracy.
Look at Traore. Now, when he started, US was totally against him, to the point where I think there is this one of the US air marshals or whatever does have their lineage from, I think, Sierra Leone or whatever. And I think he is in charge of the African Command. And so there was a whole lot of sort of building up masses in, I think they were also in a way trying to use Nigeria as a base. You can find out. They were using that to sort of intimidate him, because they said, that guy said, Traore is selling the gold or whatever in exchange for his own body security to Russia. Now, the guy has a nationalistic agenda. He's nationalized the what do you call it? The gold industry. A whole lot of things he's nationalizing. And then now, when they know they can't do any longer. And that is why I said that person has to stand. Good. Now, I think about a month or thereabout, US has signed some sort of agreement or whatever for a gold extraction. That will be under the terms of Traore with the nationalistic mindset. So that is what I say. Yes, the West will always have the influence, but the level of chaos or the interest that they have will always conflict with a nationalistic agenda.
Dan, you talked about Traore. Mm-hmm. He has a nationalistic agenda. Mm-hmm. He's a dictator. What stops an elected president having a nationalistic agenda?
Can I answer?
Before you respond to that, I'm thinking I should ask Oscar a question in that direction. But we would also want to get your view. Who is listening to us? Let us, get your perspective to this discussion. Remember, our comment section is open. You can, put in your comment there and let us get your perspective on how this discussion goes. And whatever you think we have not addressed yet, let us know in the comment section. I will pick it up. Oscar, I want to, based on what you said, Nigeria since 1999 has been in a democratic dispensation at every point in time.
Yeah.
But if in terms of economic stability, developmental stability and all that, if you check all the indices, Nigerian economy, even with sanctions and all that, Nigerian economy thrived even better during the military governments of IBB. In fact, in terms of infrastructure, like you mentioned, the benefits of sustainable infrastructure in Ghana. If you come to Nigeria, most infrastructure that are still durable used by the population of today were infrastructure that Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida's government between 1985 and 1993.
It has always been the case.
The Abuja of today, most people in Abuja today don't know the origin of Abuja. It was a military government.
Hey, Dr. Eze, I'm coming. It has always been the case. Can I before you come in, so that I don't lose my line of thought.
Okay.
You were saying a democratic president or a democratic leader, if he does not perform well, the next 4 years, they can take him away. Do you know elections in Africa is quite expensive?
Yeah.
And it eats into the national coffers.
Yeah.
Now, there was going to be a by-election here in the UK that one of the mayor in Manchester, because that he wanted to sort of come into the Commons and stage some leadership contest with the Prime Minister. So he had wanted to come in. They blocked it. And the idea, the explanation was it was going to be too expensive to run that sort of election if they let him contest that. So it's quite expensive. And looking at where we are we able to be able to spend that on every 4 years? And then again, looking at the fact that I believe that elections in Africa, about majority of those who end up being elected comes with an agenda. And that is why I'm saying that for democratic institutions to benefit Africa, the minds of Africans should also change.
Even now, if you look at it, if you look at it again, most of democratically elected presidents in Africa, or most of the democratically proposing oppositions in Africa, they are usually either FBI agent or CIA agent. You would always see, like in the case of the president of Nigeria.
Please, let me say something. Let's go back to when Obasanjo took over in 1999. No doubt, you can't argue that the economy was improving. We paid off all our national debt during Obasanjo's time. We are not owing any national debt.
Did you pay it off?
Yes.
No.
Even if it's not paid off.
It was cancelled.
Okay, what cancelled?
Because the West have introduced the Obasanjo.
Okay, so I don't know what you mean by West introduced Obasanjo. Whether cancelled or paid, it was cancelled.
Yes, okay.
It was cancelled.
Handed over to Yar'Adua.
Yeah.
Yar'Adua didn't finish his term, he died. And things we are progressively getting better. Go to good luck. And the economy started nosediving when Buhari came in and people surrounding him. My question is, if a dictator, Babangida, could build Nigeria, what stopped those other Nigerians who took over from building?
Dan, if I may pick you on this, Oscar. Now, look at this. When the military handed over to the civilian government of Obasanjo in 1999, in the case of Nigeria, Nigerian economy was almost on autopilot. Even with all the sanctions of the West, Nigerian economy was far better then than it is now. Now, remember,
when Obasanjo took over, the economy got better.
Yeah. When Obasanjo took over, the economy got better.
Yeah, better than what was handed over to him.
Now, did you remember the politics of third term during Obasanjo? What is that politics of third term? If you analyze it, that politics of third term was for Obasanjo to consolidate what the little achievement, because he has put this structure in place. He needed a longer term. So not the 8 years term, but for him to have a longer term to sustain
what he's doing.
What happened? Remember, 2005.
And now in Ghana, when Mahama came, set up Constitution Review Committee, and one of the conclusion was that I think the 4-year term is too short, and so they were looking at either one term of 7 years. This is what we are talking about. So it's the continuity, because, mind you, politics in Africa is paid for.
You see,
it's bought.
The continuity you are talking about, if you keep that person there for 14 years, if he can't do it in 4 years, he can't do it. Give him eternity. He cannot do it. He will destroy. In fact, you are giving him more time to destroy. So breaking it down makes it easy. He can, if he's destroying, he will destroy for only 4 years and go. Not giving him 7 years of destruction.
Another person will come
another person will come and destroy for 4 years.
Another 4 years. Yes.
No. You might be lucky. Get somebody. All this is we are talking about is us. What do we have in mind? Do we have the interest of the people at heart? Are we talking about Nigerians? Are we taking Ghanaians? Are we taking Cameroonians? But you talked about how expensive election is. The last episode we did on corruption in Nigeria, the money one person stole is sufficient to do election for the entire lifetime of Nigeria, for our entire generation. That person stole that money because he wasn't thinking Nigeria, he wasn't thinking right, he wasn't thinking proper. And we talked about just one person who stole one. And there are all other people there who are stealing. You blame it on democracy. We blame it on individuals. We blame it on what we are thinking. We blame it on our selfishness. Here in the West, in fact, not only in the West, world over, human beings are corrupt, wicked. But because these people, to a large extent, they think about their constituents, they think about the people. I mean, they do corrupt things, but not to the extent at which we do it.
Now, Elder, there's a question coming in here for you.
Yeah.
That question is, if you look at the countries in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, come down to Libya before the Western system destroyed Libya as alleged. So the question is, if these countries with authoritarian leadership tendencies are stable, they have very strong economy, very stable economy, and they are, even the people that are practicing democracy are looking for how to troop into those places because of their economic sustainability and economic balances. The question is, don't you think that most countries in Africa will benefit from those?
You mentioned Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so on. But you also forgot to mention, we live here in the UK. You didn't mention France. You didn't mention Germany. You didn't mention what the other Western democracies. America. These are also democracies.
But
are they not rich? Are they not prosperous? Are they not developed?
Do you know how long it took America?
You mentioned those ones that are, you think that are because they are prosperous, because they are more like
ask this question.
Yeah. So,
do you know how long it took America to fully imbibe this democracy? I think it took them more than 100 years when it first originated from Greek or something. More than 100 years. I want to finish. For the past in the 19th centuries, I mean, it wasn't allowed for even blacks to vote, women. So that is the system there, and it has taken them that 100 years more than that. I mean, history talks about, other historian talks about 200 years, but let's take it about 100 years to come to sort of that level of what we see. Now, Africa, after colonial powers left, now look at Ghana. Ghana gained independence 57. Now, we started our democratic dispensation in 1960. So it was 4 years. We have not learned to build that level of institutions. And that is what Kwame Nkrumah had wanted to sort of make sure that the vision will be there. And I think that is, we are not saying that democracy is not good, but someone to take the bull by its horn, build the structures, and develop to a point where it will be, you won't even want to not hand over.
Yeah.
And I think that has always been the problem. The time that Africa has been asked to imbibe or take on this democracy at the young and tender age, you don't give a meat to a 1-year-old person. That person needs milk. And that is a problem as Africans we are having. We have taken the democracy too much immaturely or at a tender age where the social aspect of it, we still need to work out, and the system needs to be set. We are too young for that. And that is...
Now, let me ask you this question. Might be my last question of comment. Nigeria has had independence since 1960. 1960 to now is
65 going to 66 years.
66 years by October 1st. Do you think that 65 years is long enough time to have seen positive progress in terms of building democracy? I'm not saying having a perfect democracy. Do you think 65 years is long enough period to have made some remarkable steps or positive steps or taking steps in the right direction towards building a sustainable democracy?
I mean, I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, because of course, with time, you can be able to perfect. But it is like a young child being trained how to kind of walk. You have to make sure that the legs are wobbly. And so if you allow that to use it wrongly, it might even end up being dislocated. And I'm just using that not just for
analytical purpose.
Example kind of. So what I'm saying is we started it too early. So it is taking us a long time to perfect. And that there's also some sort of section of the politics of the politicians that have also kind of hijacked it. Because, for instance, in Africa or even in Ghana, now you can decide not to do anything. The next 4 years, when you're going for an election, just go and throw some money out and they will elect you. So now everything has been so partisan, which is also in the West. But in the West, there is a level of, in the West, they do it with some level of cautiousness in terms of their partisanship. And that is my point, because as Africans, I think we haven't sort of grown to a point where we even allow the democratic institutions to kind of work. And that is where I'm coming from.
Now, you asked this question of maturity. We are beginning to, wrap up the conversation. But you are talking about this question of maturity in democracy. And if you look at the tenets of democracy, and that is where this question comes from, if Africa is ripe enough for democracy. Part of the tenets of democracy is free and fair election. And some other activities like referendum, like freedom of the press and all this, all those tenets. And if you look at what is happening today, most countries that practice the so-called democracy in Africa, there is no freedom of the press. In Nigeria, for example, the indigenous people of Biafra have been asking for a referendum, which is one of the tenets of democracy. They have not been given that opportunity for a referendum. Talk about elections. Elections, the people are supposed to vote freely and fairly. But today, in a place like Nigeria, people are being controlled and induced with cup of rice, with kerosene, with Indomie. Today, the question is, at the polling stations, people are being given cash of 5,000 naira to vote.
Do I have time to respond?
So, if you look at all these things, does it need 65 years for us to mature in this area? Or do you, or looking at all these arguments, do you think the democracy we practice in Africa is actually practicable?
What I'm going to say again is this. We are the cause of our problem.
You think so?
Not democracy. People are the ones rigging this election. People are the ones. There is people is in charge of Nigerian Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. People man those booths. People are head of security agencies that are used to rig these elections. People go out to buy these votes. We are the cause of our problem.
And the institution is not strong enough to control this.
People, we know how good, let me use that word, the various institutions in Nigeria are, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. We know how they check each other. Let me use that word, and how effective they've been. The people man those institutions as well. My concluding remark is this: we have gone too far to go back. Turning back at this stage is not going to help us. Turning back our back against democracy is not going to help us. It's for us to, have a rethink, have a nationalistic agenda. Let me borrow your words. Think our country, think our nation, think for the people, not thinking selfishly. There has been allegations and counter-allegations of influence by the West. Obviously, in international politics, everybody is out for his or her own interest. Nobody is out for your interest. So if you set yourself up to be, used against your country, unfortunately, you become a traitor. That is what you have made yourself to be. I think I've said enough.
Well, unfortunately, if you work against your country, you are sabotaging the interest of millions of population within the system. So we always need to have a rethink about how we carry ourselves in a democratic manner. Dan, do you think, as a concluding remark, do you think we should rethink our democratic principles in the African system?
I think we have to rethink, reassess. I understand your point, but I think alternatively, it can also be that we are saying a dictator with a benevolent heart, and I always use that. The alternative will also be that because every party that comes also comes with their policies. And sometimes you may even find out that some of the policies of the past has not been completed in terms of infrastructure or whatever, and they come and they just push it away. And that is a drain on the national coffers. But then one with that agenda can create a national development plan, which is what in Ghana we're trying to do. To create, let's say, a 10-year development plan that every party that comes has been instituted in the constitution, where you may come with your other agendas, but we do have a development plan. This is where the country is going. Now, this party came and have done it to this point. Okay, they overthrew by democratic elections. The other person has come. Continue it. And I think when that happens, I think we'll begin to at least reap the benefit of democracy. But until that, I think democracy is, to me, it's kind of like a smooth screen.
Well, kind of like
in Africa.
A small screen in Africa, and it is important for us to begin to rethink not just democracy, but institutions in Nigeria, and remembering that people make the government. People are the government. People are the institution. What you think about society, I think it's somebody that said, don't think of what the society will do for you, but think of what you would do for the
US president.
Yeah, for the society. So I think it's time for Africans to begin to have a thought process in this direction. It has been a very interesting conversation this evening. And as much as possible, we tried to be more practical than philosophical. As I was a bit scared, we'll confuse some of you, but you could understand that when Elder is here, Elder is, always there to reshape the conversation so that we don't blow big grammars and big jargons that will confuse you out there. And it has been interesting, getting some responses from you and asking us some questions, which some of them have come up here. We would take your comment further, and if we need to bring Daniel to the studio again, we would do that, and I believe Daniel would oblige us that opportunity.
I'm all for it.
So thank you for being part of this conversation today, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah.